Hello, everybody. On behalf of Strelka KB and the French Techs, we are very happy to welcome everybody on board today. First, let me introduce the French Tech Moscow. We are a gathering of more than 200 persons directly related to French technology in Russia. We help French tech companies to do better business in Russia, and we help as well the Russian startups and investors to choose French for setting up their new business or to invest into French startups. Second slide. Doesn't work. Can you please switch?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh. And you can find all information about us and on our website and a lot of interviews that we are providing around the French technical entrepreneurs. That's it, Max, for you.
Yes, thank you, Arnaud. I am Max Yvetot, head of urban governance at Strelka KB, and I'm here to present our company. So we are an urban consultancy firm that draws on different expertise, such as urban economy, urban anthropology, architecture, and also digital products. And this is the main topic today. We offer consulting on strategic planning for cities, but also we do master plans, design of cities, and also we design redevelopment plans. We also conduct research and analysis, and we have been leaders in creating new products, such as the Urban Environment Quality Index that will be presented by Natalia. Our clients are based in Russia, but also abroad. We have worked a lot with the federal government of Russia and with its agencies, such as the Agency for Housing, but also local authorities in Russia, but also big companies or institutions like the United Nations. It's important to stress that we are a consultancy firm, but we are a public benefit company because all the profit that is made by our activity is given to the Strelka Institute, which is an educational program specialized in architecture, but with a very broad multidisciplinary approach. Thank you very much. I hope you'll enjoy the talk and the presentations today. Natalia, it's your turn.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Natalia Shevkunova, and I'm the expert on spatial analytics for Strelka KB. And I worked with different projects related to spatial analytics. And today I will talk about the National Urban Environment Quality Index, which is kind of probably the biggest project we've done in the area and the most significant one. Could you switch the slide, please, because I can't. Thanks. So how this project appeared? Initially, it was developed independently by Strelka KB as a research project. There was a need to find a technical tool to assess the kind of myriad of Russian cities in terms of the quality of urban environment. And basically what was done initially is a study of different assessment systems that exist internationally. And there are a lot of them. So more than 150 indexes and assessment systems were have been analyzed. You probably know a lot of them. Some of them kind of assess the quality of life. The Economist has one of those, Mercer Quality of Life Index, and so on and so forth. And kind of what we discovered is that, yes, only a few of them were applicable for Russian cities for various reasons. And also not all of them actually allowed you to have an objective assessment of the environment of a specific city. And kind of go into detail and not only talk about a quality of life as a very kind of relative term and could be a matter of opinion as well or point of view, but have some like hard data that you can base that assessment on. Next slide, please. Thank you. And basically, after this study was presented to the public, the Russian government became interested in the project and implemented it and approved it as a national urban quality monitoring system for all Russian cities at the government level. So we can say that Index is actually the first annual and comprehensive assessment system, which is done for each of the 1,117 Russian cities. And a decree related to the methodology of the index was signed by the president of the Russian Federation, and ultimately the results of this annual assessment, which is developed and annually supervised by Strelka KB, are used to make decisions, kind of administrative decisions at the city level in Russia. Next, and the data is presented on the Index website, and all the results each year are published there. Next slide, please. So how this system works is that it allows us to kind of create a profile for each Russian city, and then have a data set for each city that assesses 6 areas, which are housing and adjacent areas, green areas, the street network, public and business infrastructure, public and recreational infrastructure, and then the entire city space, which is for the kind of indicators that are not directly related to one specific bit of the city, but actually allow you to make an assessment at the city scale. And then we also assess the spaces by 6 criteria: safety, comfort, environment and health, identity and variety, up-to-dateness and timeliness, and competence of management as well. In the end, there are 36 indicators that are calculated for each city. And then also it's important to notice that the assessment is done using geospatial data. And if you look at the map at the bottom of the slide, you can see that basically for each city we have detailed data with coordinates, and basically each indicator can be analyzed at different scales, at the city scale, at regional scale, and kind of at the street scale or a building scale. Next slide, please. And to do that, we use a variety of tools. We use spatial statistics, which is kind of broad geospatial analytics, but at the scale of kind of a very small scale. We use multispectral analysis of satellite images to assess the quality of the green space using a variety of vegetation indices, kind of to see where the greenery is healthy, where it's not healthy, kind of not relying on statistical data, but going into detail and using the actual satellite image to identify that. We also use machine learning and artificial intelligence to understand how many kind of vibrant spots there are in the city. We do that using social networks data and photographs that are actually published and photographs that were done in the open space in the city, and we analyze them to see where the spots are and if they were created or if an intervention is needed to create a new public space in that specific city. And we also use spatial network analysis to understand kind of accessibility of different valuable spaces in the city to the citizens. So that way we can assess if a person has a park nearby in a walking distance, like in 10-minute walking distance, and we do it for each building in each of the 1,117 cities. Next slide, please. Oh, I can actually change it now. And what actually this allows is to track the changing conditions in Russian cities and then adopt appropriate measures in every single one of them, and also for very specific areas that I mentioned before, and for very specific indicators as well. So the assessment has been done twice already, in 2018 and in 2019. And what we can see if we track the dynamics and what is changing, we can see that already 37 more cities can be evaluated as having a favorable urban environment in 2019 rather than a year before that. And then we can actually connect it to specific projects that were implemented by city administration. So for example, a new park created or a new street redevelopment, and so on and so forth. And then the Ministry of Construction can recommend what kind of project should be done next year to kind of progress and achieve the national goals in terms of quality of urban environment. And for example, this year, what we found was that the highest score overall on average in Russian cities we had for housing. So the situation is quite good. And the lowest score was for public and recreational infrastructure. So that's the area where cities on average need to work more. Thank you. That's it for my presentation.
Thank you very much, Natalia. Very good timing. We will continue on that very subject. Try to get the slide. Let's see if something happens. Very good. Thank you. I'm Arnaud Trousset. I'm currently working at Beeline, but what I present today is my personal expert view and doesn't reflect the company's opinion. After this small disclosure, let's focus a little bit on human data at the micro level. And before starting, let me review briefly the past 30 years' work towards human data in Russia. Back in those 90s, most of the required data that was available only if you could manage to find paper map of specific cities, and most of the time you had to fly there to find it. So that was interesting time. Very few data specialists then, seldom data sources, very rough GIS tools. Excel was king at the time. Jumping years, we see an apparition of a new class of specialists, the GIS geek, as we name it, speaking a very Kabbalistic language and producing ugly reports. You see on the screen what I was producing myself in Auchan Retail then 15 years ago. We see a new data sources appear, but first from major cities, Moscow, Petersburg, and so on. And we see as well an apparition of new GIS systems. Excel is still king for 95% of the market. Then 2010s years bring new 3D technologies with lots of hope for everybody. Lots of money was spent, virtually zero gain at the end of the day. Unique data sources keep growing and spreading over the minor cities of Russia. We see as well future data scientists, which were not called that way then. They get on board with first Python process automation. Now GIS tools compete with Excel. In 2015, we see the multiplication of automated SaaS solutions wishing to replace GIS geeks and outsource data gathering analysis for corporates. But the rising cost of integration of new data sources and the customization requirements from the client side and the magic mathematic model's failure strongly affects long-term profitability of most of these SaaS players. Now, the last year trends show a continual growth of new human data sources, an exponential growth of data volume, a chaotic range of processes automation, the building of new predictive artificial intelligence with pretty often a low market expertise. Additionally, we observe the rising distortion between traditional GIS geeks qualifications and the arrival on the market of heavy ad hoc project-based solutions built by IT integrators with, we can observe as well, with very limited success so far. Now, today in Russia, if we look at Moscow and St. Petersburg, the human data available seem rich enough to build smart data-driven solutions. But soon as we pass the MCAD and the CAD, and the colleagues from Strelka already did a lot of work on that, data richness is much limited. Moscow region and St. Petersburg region still represent around 40% of all available produced data in Russia today. We have identified about 130 relevant human data providers in 15 main categories. Of them, about 90% of them are commercial data. 76% are produced by Russian players. But when we look at them with specific categories, we do observe that some fields are overrepresented in number of players, especially in the telco and the transaction data. A lot of different players, but lots, especially in transaction data, a lot of small players. Time is still going on to concentration of data and the players, but there is still a lot of ego going on here from the providers. Everybody tried to make one solution, one data integrator that will keep the whole thing on together. Also, we see still pretty huge tariffs from these data from the players, and they try to find, I would say, a decent pricing. Still try, in my opinion, to get a foot on the market. Also, we can observe a deficit of national players in Russian players, I would say, in some categories, in the road and traffic data, in the points of interest, in maps providers. So we see here there is still room for new Russian players to emerge. Here I will try to get the video. Mike, if you can. Можно вот сейчас первое видео по strategic называется. Отлично. So before turning to our colleagues from Strelka and French Tech community, I will illustrate a couple of human data applications. One of them has been approached by Natalia just before. That will be related to the strategy of localization of public services premises. Let's see if we get some move here. Okay. Very often, the implementation of public service premises, such as schools, swimming pools, co-working, or whatever, is not correlated with potential users' demand. So to reach this problem, usually what one has to do is to carefully integrate in all the required data here and update it, which is very much costly for most of the players today. To perform adequate consumer surveys to understand why people are choosing these or that premises to go swimming, to go to school, and so on which grounds they are making the decisions. And thorough modelizations is required as well to help city decide where to implement those premises. that will be in real demand by local population. And local population here could be either permanent residents, could be working population, could be transiting population as well, or touristic ones. I'm going to post on the next part. If you get the video here for the mobility one, Mike, как у нас видео? Понятно. Second case is dedicated to analyze of the existing public and private premises used by the public. So here we are working on the analysis of all the data that can be gathered by either telco, either transactions, either GPS, Wi-Fi, and so on, that generates a lot of data. Most of this data is geocoded, and the density of the usage of these geosignals can be used on different maps to analyze which buildings get the most visits over a certain period of time, day, hours, months, and so on. Usually when one wants to analyze a specific footfall for a building, for a street, or whatever, the best way is to put video devices and to capture the whole traffic. So it's very good on the quality. You can analyze a lot of information, a lot of social demographics data, but it's very costly to integrate for the whole city, not saying for the whole country. So all of the geosignals and telco transaction data can be very interesting to analyze the traffic and to decide for, let's say, if we are the city is interesting to control information regarding shopping centers. Very interesting now because of the pandemic and the density of traffic, which has to be limited somehow. In the parks that could be opening next week, the touristic areas, the museums, sport facilities. The aim of the city will be to understand how to better control the resources allocations, which specific public servants to put on which locations based on existing traffic, historical traffic that's been observed, to better collect taxes, because we still have a lot of gray economy in a country. So when you have a lot of people gathering around lakes and beaches and so on, but it gets no taxes coming from specific business there is something missing. And as well to plan future projects, localizations, for instance. So for my part, that was all. I hope that it was of help, and you can find my contact below for any questions. And I will pass the floor to Daria now.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I hope I'm now on screen. I'm working for Strelka KB in a urban anthropology center, and I'm a digital anthropologist. And since digital anthropology still sounds unfamiliar to many people, I will start with clarifying why urban consultancy needs anthropologists and urban digital anthropologists in particular. So when we start to do something about the city, we first have to know what people actually want from it, why it is so. Sorry, I'm afraid the slides won't move. Grisha, could you please come up? Yeah, lovely, thank you. So here you see two embankments in Moscow. They're parallel to each other. They are both in the city center. One is Krasnopresnenskaya and the other is the Tarasa Shevchenko embankment. They look very, very similar, but that's just before we try to know which practices people do in these embankments. And so if we move forward, we see that on Krasnopresnenskaya embankment, people are like following a healthy lifestyle. They bike, they engage into sports, of course, not during the COVID quarantine. But anyway, this is the embankment for biking for active lifestyle. The opposite embankment looks very, very different. This is an embankment where people drive in their cars place a hookah, and have some kind of picnic. So if we do the similar changes on the both embankments, this could be a failure because they don't follow the people's values, practices, and actual needs. So how to do that? A normally trained anthropologist looks like this. This is Bronislaw Malinowski in 1920s in his field work. So basically, a well-trained anthropologist will spend 15 months in the field, as we call it, living among the people, investigating their needs, their values, their particular culture. But in Strelka KB, we work on a large scale, and these are only a few of the cities actually we work with, because we now work with more cities in Russia and still many abroad. So how we can do this work on this scale? And here, the digital footprints come to help us. Here you see one of the cities in Russia we have investigated. This is Kaliningrad, and you see it in 2 dimensions. One dimension is a physical dimension of streets, squares, houses, the river, and the other dimension is the layer of digital footprints, the traces we all leave online, including those on the social media, for example. So in Strelka KB, we follow an approach in which we engage both traditional field anthropology and digital anthropology. So field anthropology is very traditional approach of asking people, conducting in-depth interviews, making observations in the field, and it actually answers the question what people think about the city. But there is the other dimension, what people do in the city. And these practices are mostly well followed by the digital anthropology. To do this, we actually follow different types of digital footprints, including comments, photos, videos, likes, reposts, and of course, there is a particular value in that these digital footprints are geotagged. So this approach allows us to understand the opinions and practices of a large number of people. It's not really big data, but the data array is quite large. It can be thousands and hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of objects. Those digital footprints allow us to build a kind of a spatial and chronological portrait of the city. We know where people are spending their time, what they are fixing their attention on, and when they do that. This data reflects the most recent situation. Normally, the social research is done during a month or even more of that. And here we can learn how a city feels like today, yesterday, a year ago. The research does not affect the data because they are not actually produced for us. They are produced in a normal, reflective communication of the users with each other and the world. And it is very important to understand that the practices of behavior in the social networks are socially normed. What that means? That means that when we post something online, we actually follow some cultural values which are installed, so to say, by our education into us. So basically, the digital footprints allow us to understand not where people exactly are, that these data are not objective. They're subjective data showing us what people actually find interesting, prestigious, valuable, or vice versa, not pleasant in the city. Of course, this approach has a lot of limitations. And first, of course, are ethical constraints and closed data. So we only use open data, and closed data or private data are going into the data set, but no means. But there are also some social and demographic constraints because not everybody actually uses social media. But we can work with that. And the the answer to this challenge is that we use both traditional anthropology and digital anthropology. Digital anthropology allows us to set questions with which we go into the field. And then in the field, we actually ask the people of different social groups, different geographical groups, including those who don't have access to the internet or social media, about their feelings and attitudes about the city. So again, digital anthropology in the sense is not giving any particular answers. It goes into giving us questions, into setting strict questions to going into the field. So what can we learn using those digital footprints? We engage in a three-layer investigation process, and we analyze people, processes, and places, or users, process, and space, as you like it. So from this data, we can understand who actually uses the city or particular territories within the city, or what they need in those places, what they lack in the places, how they move around, what they see and what they ignore in the city. Do they feel that the space is comfortable and interesting for them or not? When they use it, what they do in those places, and want to show the outer world. So basically, then I'll show a few examples from our actual projects to give an understanding on what we can do with the data. So, for example, here you see a part of the project with Tashkent in Uzbekistan, where we have made a research on the Amira Timura street. We had to prepare a project on refurbishment of this particular big street. It is around 8 or 10 kilometers, if I'm not mistaken. And we had to choose particular places which are of interest to as many groups of the dwellers of Tashkent as possible. Because you cannot do everything at once. You have to select. And here, digital anthropology comes to help us. So here on the screen, you can see the heat map of this part of the city and a mark on the places which are of interest for most groups of users. Then we can make some judgments on the quality of urban textile. So, for example, what is very interesting for us is the understanding of safety, the perceived safety of the city. Do people actually feel well and safe here? So here is the city of Svobodny in Amursk region. That's as far east of Russia. And this is a small city. And here you can see, for example, the users' photos. The yellow photos, the yellow dots stand for the photos which were done in the daylight, and the blue dots stand for the photos which were done after sunset. And of course, I think you don't see a lot of blue dots here, because in this city is not perceived as very safe and sound to make photos after the sunset in the dark. The other thing we can do, we can estimate where the people go in the city and where from the tourist flows occur. So, for example, here is the city of Omsk in Siberia, which is not actually a great tourist destination, but still we can see which regions actually support the city by the tourist flows and the tourist money.
1 minute left.
Yeah. Okay, and then we can understand what are the key attractions, what is attractive for people in a particular space. So here, for example, 2 monuments on one street of Moscow, but very different. One is actually answering the need for human dimension. The other thing we can estimate is the seasonality on when people actually use the city. Here is the city of Sheregesh with a ski resort, and we can see how differently the digital traces are represented in the different periods during the winter season when the ski resort is open and in summer. And so after we have collected all this data and produced an understanding of how the city will look like, we actually do the refurbishment. We do the project on the ground. But after that, we can also check if this refurbishment was effective. So here, for example, you see the city of Krasnoyarsk, the embankment of the river. It's also in Siberia, the embankment of the river before our refurbishment and after it. So you can see the difference for yourself. So basically, with the digital tracers, we can do a lot of things. We can estimate how people think, what people think of the city, how they use it, which practices they perform. And after we have done our projects, we can also estimate if that project was effective and if the budget was actually spent for the good of the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daria. Thank you very much. Let's bring Maria here.
Hello, everyone. We can go straight to the next slide. And I'm representing here Dassault System company, which is a French tech company. And our mother company, Dassault, most probably is much more known in the world than us. But why I'm here today talking about the cities, the data, and etc. We as a company, we started back 30 years ago with the belief that data can improve engineering first. And we started with doing a 3D mock-up of the first Dassault aviation airplanes. And then we realized that actually, if we can do it for Dassault aviation, then we can do it for everyone. And the first fully digital mock-up of the plane Boeing 777 was done by Dassault System way back in the 1989. And then we did another revolution in technology, bringing product lifecycle management. And back in 2012, we actually started working on cities because we realized that we do a lot of wonderful stuff in aviation and transportation. But if we look at what affects most the human life, like cities and health, there is still a long way what data and technology can do there. And now we are doing on two major projects, which are digital twin of cities and digital twin of human being, which we believe can tremendously improve the life of people. We can go to the next slide. And just let's move the slides, please. So, and now we want to bring our data and expertise, how virtual improves the real life, into two new domains, as I said, infrastructure in cities and healthcare. Let's go to the next slide. And why we think so? Because we really need to do something to improve the quality of life in the cities. And the recent crisis really shows that we all need to create sustainable future for ourselves and our children, because from 2017, if we look, now we as a humankind and cities consume much more natural resources than nature can reproduce at the same time. And cities are overpopulated and they're facing a lot of different challenges. Like urban population grows like over 1 million people every week. Then there is real problem in social and economic domains. There is a growing, and even if this crisis shows us, how the social disparity affects our life, then there is a big technological challenge, how we can make our cities and our infrastructure sustainable, environmental and financial challenges, because we don't have a lot of money now further, so we have limited budgets to tackle all these concerns. Let's go to the next slide. And so what we have started doing, so together with the with our partners and governments. Digital or virtual city and all this digital technology, it means different things to different people. So for us, when we talk about smart city or virtual city, what we mean? We think that the city needs to have the infrastructure that helps it do modeling and simulation of different situations in the city. It needs all necessary data to do planning and simulation. It has tools to collaborate so that citizens, government officials, businesses can collaborate together, and all is done this in real time. So let's move on. And we have quite a number of different projects worldwide, but and it's in different locations. It's like such modern places and very advanced from technological perspective, like Singapore. It is cities with a heritage like Grand Metropole. It is something like Jaipur in India, which doesn't have a lot of structured data. Let's move on, please. But I can focus a little bit on what has been done in Singapore. It has been a joint project between the System and government institutions of Singapore to create the digital twin of the city that can benefit general public. For example, then governments can engage with them directly. They can consume consumer-to-consumer services. It benefits definitely businesses because they have a lot of data to work with, research community and governments because the government has access to a single source of truth to make their decisions. And let's go to the next slide, and then I explain using some use cases. For example, if we talk about environmental impact, we all know in Singapore, because of digital twin, there is an opportunity for the government. If they are building a new, let's say, building, they can look at the whole plan of the city and simulate where this building can be located so that it doesn't receive a lot of noise, let's say, from the coming airplanes, that it doesn't ruin the park, and that the park has enough of light, that you can choose your own apartment, and you can also see whether you would have, either as a government authority or as a human being, how much wind you will have and what can be done to reduce this risk. For example, for other services which the citizens are receiving, it is possible, for example, to do the planning and simulation of urban mobility. For example, while they were building the cycling paths, they were also monitoring the behavior of the citizens, how they're using really the bicycle paths, or where, at what time. And during this simulation, for example, they realized that the bus schedule, for example, was not correct, and that the children, they arrive at the bus stop, then they cross this bicycle path, and then they cross the road, and they have a lot of free time before they go to school. So this should be also remodeled. And another case, for example, what is possible to do using this digital twin for the public services. You have decided to do the reconstruction of the road, and the virtual twin allows you to look several layers up and down, and you can, for example, realize that energy facility company needs to change the pipes. And then you can go to them and discuss when they're going to do it, so that it wouldn't happen as sometimes happen in Russia, that you build the road, then the next day another service comes, they take the road away because they need to put the pipes, and then you put the new road again. So it helps to save money and also create much more amiable environment for everyone. Okay, let's move to the last one. And what can we, next one and last one, what can we do, for example, now? Let's move to the next slide. We're all talking about what is happening now, for example. Let's run the video. And for example, what data can help us solve? This is a simulation of a terrorist attack in Paris, for example. It was done. The video is should be on YouTube. And actually, the police can simulate how the gas would be spread in the city and where they should so how they should plan the evacuation of people, where they need to put ambulance services, where, you know, which areas will be most affected, and all this can be done in real time. And the same logic is being applied now, building different new hospitals or refurbishing the hospitals for COVID-19 patients, so that they're not contaminated by the airflow in the buildings. So, and I think that this is just the beginning, and I guess I would be happy to answer the questions, and I pass the floor to Arno. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. So thank you, guys. We had a pretty interesting overview about the data, the index being produced, and the anthropology linked with the digital data and the smart city approach. Let's speak a little bit. We have about 10 minutes to discuss some different questions that the floor has been given us. First question was about the list of the data providers that have been mentioned. So it's 130 data providers. So contact me. I will tell you about that later after the event. Another question was dedicated to the index that Strelka built. Question was whether it was the first index built on this scale. Some of the participants said there were previous index that were done before and much wider than what you did. Could you comment that, Natalia, please?
Yes. So yes, indeed, as I've mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, there's a wide range of different indexes that are being applied elsewhere. And the thing about our index is that it is not the first ever index created for a city, but it is the first index which assesses the quality of urban environment, of the built environment, of physical space, and it also the first one which is actually applied and implemented nationally at the government level and is calculated for each city. And it's definitely the first case of this scale where geospatial data is used in decision making at such a level.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we got another question regarding of your index production. Did you have a specific cases that you can talk on regarding the implementation of the results that you presented for a specific city, where we've seen an improvement for a specific city based on what the index said the year before?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question. The images?
No, the question is about you've seen any city taking decisions that was based on the index recommendation that did take place now.
Definitely. The index was calculated twice and will be calculated further each year. And as it is a part of the national project for the quality of urban environment, each time when the city administration and the regional administration receives the results, then the program of improvement is created for each city with the help of the Russian Ministry of Construction. So yes.
Okay, so it's still ongoing right now.
It is ongoing, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But it is the assessment is connected to kind of all the urban environment improvement projects that are implemented in any Russian city at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Daria, we had some questions regarding the digital footprints. Questions were related to specific insights that you can gather from those data about citizens. Can you give some examples for one of the city you've been working on?
Yep. Thank you, Arno. I think there is a space for another talk and for another 10 minutes, but I'll give just 2 examples of such insights. And one is dealing with the human dimension of the monuments on the urban sculpture in the streets. So it was found that and proved that the hypothesis of human scale actually works, and the small urban art, street art objects actually are of interest for people, and they tried to stop and somehow communicate with those objects. And this leads to a very interesting finding that the services in the city, for example, shops or small cafes, actually see some value in the sculptures because people stop and find the shop or a cafe nearby. So actually placing some street art can be effective to develop small businesses in the street. The other insight I want to tell you about is the idea of comfortable city spaces. As you understand, in Russia, the climate in many cities is not too comfortable for the most part of the year. And for example, during our research, we found that people actually gather together on their cars and use the underground parking lots of the trade centers to gather around and communicate in the more or less comfortable space. So that led us to an idea that climatically comfortable city spaces are actually of much need and of much demand for many Russian cities.
Okay, interesting. Second question was regarding the social networks itself that you gather data from. We've seen of the last years that's a trend that those social networks tend to restrict more and more the access to the APIs and so on, so on. So whether this field of study will be able to be there tomorrow, as these players tend to restrict more and more the access to their data?
Well, the answer is yes and no. Why no? Because, of course, the piracy on the data is becoming more and more limited. Yes, because the major companies get the agreements with the social networks and work with the open space in the open fields or in the kind of wide fields. So basically, there's still the access to this data, but it's limited and it's becoming more and more transparent, which is good news for an anthropologist and the field ethics.
Okay. And the last question was regarding I would say the cost of producing geodata from public institutes. You got resources today, which is not very limited compared to other companies in the Russian market. How do you see the trend to decrease the cost of acquisition of all the geodata for companies, public service that want to do the same thing that you do?
Is there still a question for me?
Yeah, it's a question.
Oh, okay, lovely. I'm not actually, I can't actually speak for all urban data, but still, there is always a space for collaboration. And if we find a space to a win-win situation to collaborate between a public institution and the data provider, I see that this is not impossible at all.
Maria, Natalia, do you want to jump in those questions? Maria, Natalia, any thoughts on these issues?
On data? Actually, in Russia, there is a lot of debate that data it's like the new gold, and that the governments really need to keep the data in the country and etc., and not to give it to anyone. But if we talk about the analysis of big data, and if it is a big aggregated data and the sample size of it, it's real. If you look, for example, at the middle class and its behavior patterns, it's mostly quite similar in Russia or in Ukraine or in Czech Republic. So there is not so much uniqueness as people believe. Definitely, there should be good ethical practices in place so that personal data of people is protected and not leaked for unauthorized usage. But to think that this is new gold or new oil, I think this is too far. And really, if you are too restrictive, then you are limiting your own opportunities to create the better future for your citizens.
Okay, thank you. Natalia, do you want to intervene in that field, saying what, when you're gathering a lot of data yourself, how you see these points?
Definitely, I would say that the concerns about the collection of data, data mining, are obvious. At the same time, it's quite unfortunate if the policy would be to completely restrict the use of this data and limit it to a degree where it's not possible to use it even for research. I think that that's kind of a missed opportunity to use this data for research and improvement. So I think I would hope for a more nuanced approach. And I can say for in Strelka KB, we don't collect enormous amounts of data. We're not interested in collecting as much data as possible, right? What we are interested in is collecting maybe or having very specific information that we need for a very specific indicator or very specific study. And there's a lot of data that we don't need at all, and would be perfectly happy to have like kind of a limited scope of it, which is enough if you use it in a smart way.
Okay,
thank
you very much. Let's close this first panel and switch on the second part of our discussion today. So we've been discussing a lot about data, about the studying of this data, the production of studying regarding cities and business. Let's now switch on the applications of the use of this data towards selection of several French company and Russian institute, Strelka here, how they use this data, how they generate business based on this data. So our first guest now will be Ivan from Strelka Institute.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm glad to be here with you today. I'm the head of digital products in Strelka KB. So today I'll tell you about our digital products, which we've developed our own. So when we are talking about digital products at all, this is mostly a different web services for many people, or for businesses, or for government. So when we start to think about create our own digital products here in Strelka KB, we started to, I'm sorry, I have a problem with the slide. Yeah, thank you. When we start to think about our own digital products, we started to find our strength as a strategy consulting firm and trying to get another added value for our current customers during digital channel. So we started to think what could be digitalized from what we do now. And next, please. Thanks. And we started to look through our current products, which are strategies for cities, socioeconomic strategies for regions, and many other products. And started to think how can we digitalize them, and also would it be valuable for our current customers. And in parallel, we thought how could we bring something new to the market regarding urban data, regarding urban services, based on our KB expertise in complex analysis of city issues. And so we start to think, what can we do new, and maybe for new customers, which we currently not even have. And next, please. Also, we thought about which technology we can use. So which IT competencies we can collect here in KB, like a mini internal startup, which could be more, how to say, more leveraging for being valuable. And we thought that artificial intelligence, GIS tools, and ETL tools also could be our strengths also. And based on all of these, our internal competencies, we gather our dream team. And next, please. And we created, for now, we've created 2 digital products which are now in production. First of them is Urban Metrics. It is a cloud urban data platform where we collect a lot of data about users, about citizens, tourists, about places, and even regulation documents, and also about economies of the cities. And now we cover all Russian cities. We prepared more than 6 different data sets. Half of them are analytical data sets, and this is actually Strelka KB know-how, most of them. Also, some of data sets we collect because of Daria's work on digital anthropology, and some of them are from open source resources. So we collect here in this platform more than 100 data sources. Next, please. And how it's work actually. We collect open urban data from government systems and from other non-commercial resources. Also, we use commercial API. Of course, we gather all of Strelka KB data and also some partners' data. We collect all of them in our City Lake, City Digital Data Lake. Built on top of this lake, our transformation procedures, which are actually natural language processing procedures, computer vision, and other artificial intelligence algorithms. Also GIS tools and GIS analysis of because most of this data we collected is special data. After we collect and somehow transformate this data, we prepared user interface and also data API. So for now, this platform is run, and citizens, administrations, businesses, and even startups can use this platform, use data from this platform, and also analytical indicators which we calculate to solve their own issues, to solve their own problems. For example, for administration, it is mostly city and urban planning issues. For citizens, it is where should I buy my own apartments, for example. For businesses, this is of course seeking of optimal location in the city or decision about closing some current locations and so on. And for startups, it is just a good platform to start because here we can provide them a lot of different data which can help them to build their own good, cool urban services. Next, please. And yes, for now, we're also looking for technical partners who can add value to our platform and whom we could be also helpful. And for now, we're in a dialogue with some of them. And so, if you want, we will wait for you. Next, please. Yeah, and the second one, digital product, for now also in production. It is a omnichannel civic tech platform. It calls What Does City Want? And in Russian, it Хочет город. This platform help our customers to start their own campaigns in terms of crowdsourcing of citizens' ideas about city development. Our customers can start a campaign of voting, crowdfunding, or even issue management campaign. And we've got more than 10 cities connected to this platform for now. We've done a lot of actually projects and a lot of campaigns on this platform and collected over 35,000 ideas here. Next, please. How it works. Citizens could post their own ideas or feedback during, for example, chatbot in messengers or social media networks, or during just feedback form on a website. All of these data, after collecting, analyze in an automatic way. Analysis tools include semantic analysis, emotional analysis, clustering of most important issues, and also toponym decodes and different facts extraction. And in administration panel, our customer can look through all of this data in a simple, clear, and transparent way, with all these indicators in one dashboard on one map, and use it for their own needs. So again, this platform available during user interface and during API for administration of the cities, businesses, and different startups. Please, next.
Last minute, Ivan.
Yeah, thank you. And now we are looking for, we are seeking the partners, as I said, and in a fortnight, in 2 weeks, we will conduct our first Strelka KB hackathon. It will be digital urban hackathon, something like that, where we provide different teams, different developer teams, also with architects inside them, to use our platforms for urban metrics and what a city wants to solve some city or citizens issue on top of these platforms. So we started to grow some, urban digital ecosystem. So yeah, thanks. That was my final slide. Thanks all.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Let's welcome here Jan Strobe from Sigfox Russia.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. So, sorry, it's moving a little fast. Thank you very much for this time. So today I will describe one of the use cases when we speak about smart city. It's about waste management. So first of all, what is waste for a city? We speak about 2.2 billion tons worldwide. This is what we produce every year. If you put it in a truck, just to put a picture, it's like a truck would be behind each other, and it would be 24 times around the Earth. So it's quite a lot. And we speak about just the future. This figure is going to be multiplied by not more than 10 in the coming years. So this is just enormous. And when we speak about smart city, why do we need to handle it? First, when we speak about waste, it's a sanity issue. Then it's a cost issue. And here we speak a lot about the value of data, how we can use data to reduce the cost of the city and to make things which are new. It's a question about recycling, new processes, how we reuse what we have in the city. It's about attraction of the city. A dirty city is not a city where you want to live. So when we speak about index, it's not something which is nice. And when we speak on the contrary, waste management today is part of the official Russian smart city ranking. So having a smart process will increase your rating around Russian cities. And last but not least, when we speak about waste, we speak about traffic, we speak about production of pollutions, noise, and so on. So when we speak about Sigfox, I will explain how the process of waste management was implemented. So first of all, any of our projects, it's, I would say, a partnership between a company who is delivering a solution, a partnership with, I would say, a technology in order to transport the data, so that we ensure that all this is able to work together. So in our case, we have the company which is called Cinceneo, which are the European specialists in terms of waste management. They are already have delivered more than 230 projects in more than 40 countries and 5 continents. So this is, I would say, the service deliveries. And on the other side, we have Sigfox, who is, I would say, technology and operators which are present in more than 70 countries. And we as Sigfox are delivering all the means to allow smart cities, to allow the customers to have the data available as cheap as possible. And for this, we have one global network which allows to collect small messages. In our case, it will be about position of the waste bins. It will be about the fulfillment level, and we transport this data to the platform of the customer where it's going to be analyzed, and we are going to be able to operate it. So how does it work? With a well-managed process management, you get the following savings. First, I would say you get cost reductions. So for a city which implements it, they can reduce by almost half the cost of waste management. So they get more than 30% of saving. Then they increase the attractivity. We have also more about when billing, because we reduce by 30% the number of trucks needed to collect your waste, so which is just huge when we speak about a city. And because you are able to monitor, because you are able to propagate the information, not only, I would say, for the manager of the city, but to the citizen, you are getting also more information about efficiency. So your citizens are going to see what is the level of recycling in this quarter, how much you use of waste in this quarter, and you are able to change the mindset and do much better in terms of reducing the waste. And if we just speak about an application, which is one city in Bratislava, it's a 500,000 inhabitants, European capitals. They had more than 20,000 bins. And if we speak about just what they were able to reach, they reached 50% of the reduction of the pickup, because they were able to optimize the size of the bin. They were able to see what were the optimized paths to pick up the bins and when. They reallocate some part of the bins to other kinds of recycling, because they see that they reach the critical mass for it. And for them, it is a 20 million euro saving over 5 years. So, which is a lot when we speak about IoT, when we speak about smart city, because this money can be reinvested in other places. So what we provide devices. In this solution, we provide networks, we provide the analytics, and we provide the tools in order to allow the cost reduction. So, but when we speak more globally about smart city, I would say this example, I think, is very interesting, because the waste data collections, when we speak about data, it's only the visible part of the iceberg, what you see generally. But when you go more inside, you will see that thanks to this data, you will be able to do a more advanced process, which is called asset planning. You will plan your bins as assets of your city, how you grow, how you reduce. You will then, one level down, start to plan the routes, where you put the assets in order to reduce the transport. And last but not least, when we go really deep inside and we start to monetize and give very lot of value to it, we start to see how we use this data in order to plan the city and the city extension. Because thanks to waste, you know how many people are really living here, you know the level of education, you can determine their waste profile and understand which kind of people are living. So indirectly, you have anonymized data, which you can use in order to drive your smart city transformation. So what I want to explain and to see here is that IoT is not about what is obvious. It's about whatever you can generate on top of those extracted, I would say, cheap data, in order to generate something new. And here, waste management is really a good example about how you can get it. So as a conclusion, I would say that tomorrow with Sigfox, the city is going to be much more, I would say, actionable. We are able to transfer information about any part of the city for a very low cost. And this data is information that will ask you to do something. So it's going to see, I need here help, there is an alarm, please pick me up. So the city is going to be totally transformed, and we are going to extend totally the number of points we are able to assess. And as a conclusion, I would say Sigfox enables this transformation. We have seen it on one example about the smart city, but you could have much more other examples. And I would like that with this very short intervention, you start to think a little bit differently, because data is not only about, I would say, something raw. It's something that is like a diamond. You need to work it out in order to find a better way to use it. And if you speak about our portfolio, we have more than 250 solutions around smart city. And after, for the question answer, Olga, who is also part of is also here, will answer to them. Thank you very much, and I leave the place to the next one.
Thank you very much, Jan. So after IoT processes this specific example of how the waste management could be enhanced, let's switch to another speaker, Nikita, that will speak about the utility and energy processor producer like EDF. No. That's going to be the next one, if I'm wrong. What do you want? Okay. So we switch to Orange Business Services. So Nikita. Nikita, do you hear us? Nikita, hello?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Great.
Sorry.
Now I'm lost the control.
So we just switch to last speakers.
Okay. I will ask you to switch the slides. Okay. Right. I'm working in Orange Business Services, and actually we're working on different projects concerning smart city, and we providing consultancy, providing the building and implementation of digital services, and the operational part as well, such as what we call run. And so we have a full picture or end-to-end view on how the services should be planned, or how they should be built, and how they should be operated. And as all previous speakers explained, so the value of data is very high, is all our day-to-day life now, and it's merely more important in a smart city environment, as the value of smart city actually is the value of that data. And I will speak a little bit how we do approach of this data value in all the phases of smart city planning, smart city building, and smart city operating. So here on this slide, you can see our approach to the smart city process implementations, and I want to focus more on master plan development phase, because build, actually, this is pretty much similar to any big telco or IT project. However, smart city as environments is much more complex than any standard telco or IT project, when you have a lot of stakeholders, such as city government, investors, developers, business owners, you have various regulatory institutions, you have citizens, you have service provider, etc. Sorry. Yeah, so of course, there is various flavors and various areas in the smart city. some concerns to the security, to the operation, to the environment, to the infrastructure, and all this data should be collected and processed in various ways. And what is important to understand that all the smart city projects is have different goals, and some of them is the value and attractiveness of the city, comfort of the citizens, it's a safety, but all smart city projects, most of them are commercial projects. And when we approach the concept and master plan development, we have to keep in mind that services that we should implement should be designed with the concept of monetization. And there is a various approach of the monetization and on the value of the data that we are collecting and how we collect, bring them together, how the data should be processed, how the exchange of the data will be constructed amongst all the stakeholders is very important as well. So I'm trying to go to the next slide. So actually, how the value of the data is built. We have different smart data feeds, which is coming from the sensors, the data of the mobile services, web applications, various input sources such as video cameras or any external events or devices that can capture those events, for example, weather, for example, the crowd detection, some mobile data, as I said. So we can gather all this data, and then on this chain, we need to build a value. Let's go to the next slide. So those data is traveling via various planes. So, of course, you can understand that smart city is very complex technical architecture, which includes different layers, from endpoint devices through different type of networks, such as Sigfox, such as Wi-Fi, LANs, mobile data. It goes to the clouds usually, and or storages and operational centers. And then you have various business applications that can aggregate those data and use it for specific services. And one of the key elements of the smart city infrastructure is the city operational center, which should give the enough sources to take make decisions to the city governments, or provide business information that will allow you to drive business output of those services. And let's see how the Orange see the approach to this construction of the value through the chain. And I want to underline that all this work is usually done on the preliminary stage. And of course, we do use agile methodology when we go through the constant circle of improvement from in the concept of this architecture, enterprise architecture of the smart city, through the build up to the implementation and run phase. So we are defining in the beginning the use cases, how we want to monetize the data and how we will create the data set and what are the expected outputs. So the data chains are connected to the business models and business cases. The difference between models and cases that in business case we can estimate the required efforts that we need to consider to build this digital service, and the model will describe more in details how the service will be sold, what are the audience, what are the estimated numbers, what are the potential growth, how we can change the tariffs of the services, how many people will use it, what will be development plan, etc. Of course, there is a validation stage when we can see the results and adjust the modeling. And then we can go production. Of course, we industrialize. And again, this improvement circle goes over and over again. I will give a few examples afterwards. For example, as I said, there is a different type of data that comes from the various sources and are dedicated to different services, and all the services may be monetized differently. As, for example, as Arnaud said in a previous session about waste collection, but those are data that will have to give you enough reasons to make business decisions and understand how those inputs will affect the smart city KPIs. And the breakdown of the services can be very different, but as I said, you can have the inputs about energy, you can have the monitoring of the weather or ecological system, the crowding, transport, any city service that you can name. And then this data, sorry, got the wrong direction. Those data will actually come to you as a report. And however, the report that will say that your transport is going through the various waypoints in a specific amount of time, your delivery mode is providing that much deliveries per day, etc. But those are report and not a data that will reflect your KPIs. And here, the very important is for us is application of data science, and when we can decide what type of data are more important or have more influence to the KPIs of the city. The tools that we are using to understand this value is are different. For example, I will give you the example with the business model canvas. Hopefully I can go to the next slide. When we can, for example, for waste management, we can track the record of the transport and then provide to the decision maker enough data to understand either those KPIs has been achieved or underachieved. So as I said, we provide the data analysis tools, and we do this data value analysis on the modeling stage, and this helps us to create the understandable picture of output of smart city projects that will influence the participation usually of investors, give the horizon of planning for city government, and will help us to create the roadmap of the development. That's all from my side. Thank you very much. If you have questions, please do not hesitate.
Thank you, Nikita. Thank you very much. And to conclude the last speaker, let's Gonzague Flutch will talk on behalf of EDF, French utility and electricity producer. Gonzague.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, can I control the screen? Yes, should be okay. So, my name is Gonzague Flutch. I'm going backward. And I'm responsible for smart and sustainable city projects for the EDF group in Russia and the CIS. So today I will try to share with you the vision of EDF, which has a company integrator has developed and packaged a comprehensive range of offers into an integrated approach for smart and sustainable cities. Yes. So as you know, but just the no. So the starting point is to better understand the challenges cities worldwide are facing and will be facing. And as you may know, by 2030, that is to say exactly within one generation, cities will concentrate 70% of the world population on 2% of the Earth's territory. So urban territories will represent 80% of energy consumption, of 90% of CO2 emission. Needless to recall that it will be plus 2 billion people more than today. This is huge. And the picture you see on the screen was designed by a French concept artist for a blockbuster movie produced by Disney. And actually, a Saudi prince, Mohammed bin Salman, watched this movie on a plane and decided to hire the bureau of this concept artist to design and conceive a huge project of a new city in Saudi Arabia, the NEOM project. It's a huge and giant project, $500 billion or something. And this new city will be developed should be developed by 2025. So, saying that, what could be the role of an historical energy players like EDF in developing smart and sustainable cities? The main thing about us is that we produce and generate CO2-free energy. We produce, generate, and supply CO2-free energy, or almost CO2-free energy. It's 90% of our electricity as of today. So we developed a whole range of solutions in order to support decision makers to find the right balance between these three pillars: the environment, the quality of life, and the economical aspect of their projects. Because this balance is the key to improve the attractivity of the territories. And there are underlying trends of it. It's that we see that the world should have to become more and more decarbonized, is more and more decentralized. It's true for decision makers, but it's also true for our consumers, that some call them now prosumers. And the technological trend of all of it is the digitization of our businesses, historical businesses. So I was talking about the technological revolution. Everything that you see on this slide, it's now in the business of EDF, and it's technologies that have been developed, let's say, for the past decade. We've seen like game-changing technologies that are now commercial technologies that we are now either piloting in our projects or that we use in our businesses. So for a decision maker, for a city government, but also for development companies, the idea is that they have to improve the attractivity of the project, finding the right, using the right technologies, and being able to find their way into this technological mapping, this map of innovation, because these are the key technologies to improve the attractivity of the projects, and to find this balance between environment, CO2, the cutting of CO2 emissions, but also finding the right, let's say, to balance the cost as regarding investment costs, but as well regarding operations. So for that, we developed solutions on the whole value chain of the urban project, with solutions at the very early stage of smart urban planning, when we develop consulting services to find the best master plan, and in order to integrate the energy component as early as possible in the project. But not only energy, but everything that is linked to energy, that is to say transportation, public lighting, and so on and so on. So once we have found this best sustainable and energy and urban concept, we have the key to develop the infrastructure that will be smart. That is to say that we'll be able to gather data, to communicate these data, and to proceed this data in order to transform these data into actionable information. And with this actionable information, we have the possibility, together with our client, to develop smart services to different kind of final users, citizens, government, corporates, and so on and so on. And these smart services will be the key to the attractivity of the territory. So this is our smart energy and urban planning tool. It was born in Singapore something like 10 years ago, and it's used by the housing board of Singapore Housing Development Board to plan and optimize 80% of buildings in Singapore. And we use this platform, the EDF City platform, to improve, for example, the Linggong project in China, which is near Shanghai. We cut by half the CO2 emission in this project. We use we are in discussion in Madrid, we have project in Lyon, in Berlin, and one of our major projects was in Moscow, where this platform was used by Sberbank to plan and develop a new territory of Moscow city. Not Moscow city, the business center, but Moscow, one new territory of the Russian capital. No, this way. So I was talking about smart energy and urban planning, and this is very close to what Nikita from Orange Business Service presented. We have also our solutions to create and integrated control and monitoring and control centers for cities. And one very interesting project is in Dijon, where we gathered six departments of the city hall that used to work separately into a complex and integrated command and control center. So this is a huge project, but the idea there is that we will develop the whole solution to gather data and optimize the operation of urban services, from lighting to CCTV, traffic lights, and so on and so on. But we also put all our expertise and competencies on the field of operations. So, because our core historical and core business is the business of a utility, so we are used to managing this urban services. So we developed the solution together with the city government in order to really improve their day-to-day work of their teams. And this create a real relation with the client that help developing new services, new technologies on this territory. For instance, in Dijon, we are now we will now develop hydrogen transportation. So we will produce renewable energy from sun, from solar, and waste energy, waste incineration, to feed to produce CO2-free hydrogen to feed buses and waste trucks, waste management, waste collect trucks. So this is really the deep work, the deep relationship we create with our clients in order not only to act and to sell them technological solutions, but also to support them in once again improving the attractivity of the territory. And finally, and I won't get really into detail, but this is for decision makers, for the city government, but also I was speaking about the decentralization of the technologies, but also the development of this prosumer concept. We are now very involved in the creation of let's say local energy communities, because energy system used to be very centralized, but now people want to produce their renewable energy, to share it with their neighbors, and we design, using the data collected by smart meters, the solutions in order to create these transactive energy systems on the local level, to develop this idea of energy communities, to have cities that are more self-sufficient, that are more energy efficient, and also to have an impact also at the social level. And for this, the technology we use can be smart meters. That's the case in France, but we have also a very innovative project in California, in Sacramento, using blockchain technologies. So you see, the technology is not it's really a mean to support the vision and to support the attractivity of the technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gonzaga. So we finished this part. Now we'll discuss a little bit around these different 4 or 5 topics we had just the hour before. First question will be probably for Strelka, regarding which Ivana, which French technologies do you are currently using for Strelka, for the projects you are working on?
You mean for digital products, or?
Yeah, digital or for hardware, depending on what kind of projects you are.
I'm not sure that we, for now, actually use some French technologies. I'm not sure, but
okay. So we'll be a start.
We will, because now we are in a dialogue with some French partners.
Okay, so that's good. I hope this meeting today will help to start new discussions. Okay.
Yeah, I hope.
Good. Second point, what is the current technology? Let's kiss this question for you. The current technology that you see are missing in your offer. You mentioned you are looking for some partners today. In which specific directions you are looking for partners? And in this opinion, which French sectors of French technology could be interesting for you today?
Now we are in a dialogue about virtualization of city environment in terms of 3D model of the city. Mm-hmm. We've got, as I mentioned, deep and broad understanding of city data ontology and city processes, and we know preferences of citizens in Russian cities. So, and we have an open data platform. On top of this platform, we think that it would be easier and not so expensive to build a virtual copy of the city. So now we are in dialogue in this topic.
Okay, thank you. Question for Olga from Sigfox. From the YouTube channel, people were asking whether how do you plan your network to take in Russia, on which basis? And the second question is linked to the fact that your sensors are mainly down the ground. How can they? The question was whether how they can preserve needed signals based on what they are down the ground?
Hello, and thank you for the question. So regarding the first question, we are plan our Sigfox network based on the population and based on the city population. So currently we have base stations installed in Moscow and surrounds, and in plans we have St. Pete and other major cities in Russia. As for the second question, how do we solve use cases if our sensors under the ground? So first of all, we have a lot of solutions and a lot of sensors in our ecosystem. Second of all, Sigfox is based on ultra narrow spectrum, which has very good penetration. And in the use cases where the sensors are underground, we use repetitors to make sure that the signals are going through.
Okay, thank you. So there is no limitation about how far, how deep in the ground should they be to be able to work correctly?
There is certainly the limitation, but you need to check based on a certain use case.
Okay.
Like, I mean, we didn't test it in the mining, but certainly it should work like in metro stations underground.
Okay. And in Saransk, the case you mentioned, what exactly are you solving today?
In Saransk, we are solving the issue. We will have a project where we will check the measurements of electricity and energy. And the second project we will have there is connected to office space where we will install the sensors inside the buildings and help the owners of the building see how the office spaces are used.
Okay, thank you. A question now probably for Anne, Gonzaga, and Nikita, and for Olga. We are speaking a lot about the data that are produced by the whole range of players in a city, the city itself, the citizens, the business, the building, and so on, so on. So I've seen a lot of information regarding data marketplace that should be coming as a result of this data integration. Question is, who should run this data marketplace, in your opinion? Who starts?
I can say a few words about that, how we envision that. Actually, the smart city project has to have an owner and the entity that runs all the infrastructure. That may be within the city government, or we operate the definition as a smart city operator. So as we see, it's a smart city operator that can run this data marketplace. And actually, the smart city, as I said, is the whole ecosystems that connects various actors. And the role of the smart city operator is provide the environments to make this data market or service market or this connectivity possible.
Let's say for the kind of projects you've been working on, studying Singapore or the projects, who is from this consortium? It's mainly consortium usually that run these projects. Who owns the major share and who run the business within the consortium usually? It's a city itself. It's a private developer. It's who usually run the business.
Well, as per our experience within Middle East, all the city projects there has private developers and business owners. So the major share, of course, well, it's different. It's varied from case to case, but usually it's roughly 50-50 city government and business development.
Okay, Gonzaga, you want to add something here?
Yes, it's a very interesting question, and what we see is the trend of the development of private projects, let's say private cities, but in Russia, but in the Middle East and so on. It's very interesting, but because it's a question of the city and this urban environment, what for. I believe that it should be it should be attractive a city should be attractive and should fight for this attractivity. And what we see, if the motivation is private, sometimes it's difficult to see all the opportunities that these data can create, not only on a commercial point of view for, let's say, short-term business, but also to create this long-term attractivity. And in France, in Europe, you have very interesting projects around open data, with Open Data Initiative. It's the case in Dijon, it's the case in Nice, for example. But here we see that these cities they share a long-term vision, saying that the access to the data for economical players, for companies, for startups, for universities, for a lot of players will be this resource. Will be a resource that will create this attractivity on the long term. It's not just only about selling data, even if it's packaged data or giving access to a data lake, giving to make players and companies pay to have access to this to data lakes. And but on the other end, you have to find the resources, the investment to fund this project. And a lot of very interesting smart cities projects are private. So you have to find this balance. And I must say, for instance, that in Russia, we had some interesting discussion with our potential clients about this. And we see that they tend to see this data as a short-term the resource that should be directly monetized. I think that our role, because we are not, our role is not to sell data. Our role is to work on the attractivity and the efficiency of urban services, is to make them understand that they should have a long-term approach on this.
But the question is about the education, about the government authorities or the private developers, whether this open data approach from cities like London, New York, or what is seen in Paris and so on, can bring for the city a new business for the city and new jobs and new companies being created and making service upon that. So at the end, it's always a solutions that help the city and the people living in. But the question is about how the education, how governments, authorities, or private developers could be educated on that be shown models that works, that at the help the city and citizens at the end. So there should be a lot of impulse about that. Ivan, do you have something, or Olga, about these topics?
Actually, yeah, we looked at this problem also, and we think that, and we see that most of our customers, which are city administrations, they're actually cannot maybe not because of their not high maturity in digital technologies, they are not ready to use data as it is, even if this is indicators are actually are insights of the city to to gather people some, box products. So one big red button, which will solve all their issues, all their problems. So this is not about data market. This is about services market. And I think in Russia we will see how this data market will grow. In
I think we lost Ivan a little bit.
years.
Ben, can you please repeat? We didn't hear you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I have some issues. Do you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I try to explain that we see that now government, not government, but let's say city administrations, they're not ready to use data itself, so they haven't got special departments, many of Russian cities, for example. And still we should talk about, about finished products, about services, about, I don't know, have you heard it? Like a big red button, which will solve all city problems.
One ring to solve.
Yeah, and we are working on this in this direction. So we start from data layer, and we move into data services and finish services to city administration and developers also. And for today, as I think, data market in Russia is still in a start position. In some industries, it is more mature than in government and in city development. But we will see the growth in recent years, I think. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you all very much for the talk, for the discussions. I hope it was a good start to initiate new French and Russian discussions over how our technologies, our service can work together. On behalf of Strelka KB and the French Tech Moscow, I want to thank you, all of them, for your work today. Thank you for the organization, technical part to make this event, online event, happen. And if any questions, you can contact Strelka or French Tech Moscow, or you're going to have the information about the speakers. And I hope we'll be working together. Thank you very much.